All right, let's talk Atlanta Falcons. It's been a relatively quiet offseason up to this point for Atlanta. Of course, this is a team with a new young starting quarterback in Michael Penix Jr. A lot of talent. I think a lot of people are expecting the Atlanta Falcons to take the next step in 2025, finally, when they're transitioning to Penix full time. But lost in the hustle and bustle of everything that's been happening this offseason, it looks like the Falcons are preparing an absolutely massive move. I think this is good news on the Atlanta front. We'll get to that in just 1 second. But first, I'm Nick, that's Andrew, and this is Saturday Morning Inspection. All right, the undercurrent of everything going on with the Atlanta Falcons this offseason is, of course, the quarterback position, specifically Kirk Cousins and everything that's going on there. There were a lot of rumors and reports early on in the offseason that Kirk Cousins was going to be traded. He obviously has a no trade clause, but that, of course, could be waived if he's traded somewhere he wants to go. Those rumors kind of died down. Now it looks like those rumors are picking up once again, and the Falcons appear to be close to be making this massive trade. Let's pull up this report, this tweet or post on X or whatever you want to call it, courtesy of Josina Anderson. Evening notes the offseason carousel continues to churn. I was just told these two quarterback names came up in recent preliminary trade inquiries or internal discussions per a league source, Kirk Cousins and Will Levis. Atlanta has been getting calls about Kirk Cousins. I heard talk with third round pick being potentially actionable. And then there's the Titans stuff, which we really don't care about. Something to monitor. There are always curveballs. Look, I think the Atlanta Falcons are still going to trade Kirk Cousins. We've talked about it a lot this offseason. When you go back to January, February timeframe, there was obviously the millions of dollars of roster bonus that had to get paid to Kirk Cousins. If the Atlanta Falcons decided not to release him, the Falcons decided to hold on to him, eat that cost. Now that that cost is incurred, I think the Falcons are poised to make a trade for Kirk Cousins. And the third round pick aspect is what's really interesting. Let's go into the second graphic here. This is courtesy of Perplexity AI. We're not sponsored by them or anything. I just love them as my preferred artificial intelligence tool. And here's just a list of five quarterbacks that have been traded for roughly a third round pick going back the last 3-4 years or so. Geno Smith a few weeks ago, Kenny Pickett, Sam Howell, Matt Ryan, and Carson Wentz. So you can see a third round pick is actually a pretty good ballpark for a guy of Kirk Cousins. He definitely falls into the Geno Smith and Matt Ryan camp in terms of veteran quarterback down to the last few years of career. Some concerns, but when healthy, can still play at a high level. I definitely think there's some team out there that'd be very interested in going after Kirk Cousins. I think a third round pick for Cousins is a deal that's going to happen sooner rather than later. All right, Miles, I know you've got a few thoughts on this, but before I hand it over to you, Falcons fans in the comment section below, what do you think of a potential Kirk Cousins trade for a third round pick? Do you love the idea of it? Do you think it's too much, too little? Do you think they should hold on to Kirk Cousins, make him their quarterback too for the off or for the entire season in case something happens to Michael Penix Jr.? Give us your thoughts on everything Kirk Cousins in the comment section below. But Mize, over to you. What are your thoughts on everything Falcons and the quarterback position?
Well, I think this is a really interesting situation because at first, when the Falcons it felt like they were holding Kirk Cousins and said, all right, well, he's going to be our backup. We're going to keep him on the roster. I was like, I feel like they should be more aggressive in moving him. But now that I see how the quarterback landscape in the NFL has kind of unfolded a little bit, I think it's more interesting what is going on here with the Atlanta Falcons. I think they're in a really powerful position as far as there's not really any quarterbacks on the market anymore that are available, especially of Kirk Cousins' caliber. But yet there are still teams that definitely need a quarterback. Some guys, are up higher in the draft. We know, like the New York Giants or the Titans, they're probably going to draft a quarterback if they need one. But if they don't, the other teams that are also quarterback needy, most notably comes to mind is Pittsburgh Steelers, one of the jumps to mind. They aren't in position to really trade up that high in the draft. Or I mean, they could, but they'd be mortgaging a lot of draft capital to get up that high from the spots they're in the draft. So I think the Falcons are in a really optimal position to trade Kirk Cousins. And I think what you're saying here is very apt. I think at least a third round pick is something that we could see as a really good option here for the Atlanta Falcons to get in return from Cousins. Never know what can happen. Someone could get desperate, someone get a little bit needy. Could be more, but I think that third round pick I think they could get that no problem for Kirk Cousins. He's definitely in that range, as you said, very comparable to the Matt Ryans of the world, the Geno Smiths of the world. And I think there are a lot of teams out there. It seems like they're building rosters, but the quarterbacks have been scarce. If they now make Cousins available on the market or try to more aggressively trade him, I think now's the time. They've waited. The first wave is gone. All the desirable quarterbacks are gone. Now Kirk Cousins is out there and he looks like a star as far as quarterbacks that are available. Versus before that, there was a lot of other options out there. I think there was a few guys being able to come around the market. You think Sam Darnold's, you think Geno Smith, absolutely someone that was on that list, but he was one of the guys out there. They kind of overshadowed people like Kirk Cousins, but I think now the market's thinned out. Kirk Cousins is a commodity once again. The demand of teams is a little bit higher because there's less supply of quarterbacks. I think it sounds like a great business move if you're thinking about what the Falcons have done here as well. So I think overall, really smart move by the Falcons, and I think it's going to pay off for them what they've done so far here.
Yeah, because there's a lot of teams that look at their quarterback situation, and I think Pittsburgh is one of the big names, obviously. But you can even just look around the National Football League, and even if you look at, say, the New York Jets, that gave Justin Fields a lot of money, of course. But if you're the Jets, are you totally in love with Kirk Cousins? Is there a dark horse contending team that really needs a good backup? Maybe the Miami Dolphins want to bring in Kirk Cousins to back up Tua with the injury concerns, right? There's a lot of teams out there that could be very interested in Kirk Cousins, especially for a third round pick. And also could be considering Kirk Cousins because his cap hit would drop dramatically if they were to trade him and designate him as a post June 1st trade, which was in all likelihood would happen. You can do that before June 1st. It's just an accounting thing, how you want to designate the trade. It would basically lower Kirk Cousins' cap hit against the team receiving him from $40 million this year. This is what he cost the Atlanta Falcons to $12.5 million to the team that receives him, right? So $12.5 million for a backup quarterback is a little on the more expensive side. For a starter, it's a downright steal. I'm sorry, it'd be the other way around. The Falcons cap hit would lower to $12.5 million in dead money, and the team receiving him would take on a $27.5 million cap hit, which would be a steal for a starter. Again, a little bit more expensive for a backup, but a quality player Kirk Cousins still is. Even despite the injuries and the poor performance in 2024, he still graded out, according to PFF, 72.3 passing, which again, very solid grade. We kind of look at PFF grades in the 70s is good, solid starter. 80s is Pro Bowl caliber stuff. 90s is Hall of Fame. In fact, if you look at Kirk Cousins, his past few years, last season graded out passing 72.3, 2023, 85.1, 2022, 77.7, and 2021, 86.8. So over the past 4 years or so, he is playing at a good to great level pretty consistently, excuse me. The injuries are a concern, obviously coming off the Achilles. He's getting very old. No one is expecting him to be an elite all-pro quarterback, but I think he is the best bridge quarterback available right now. And I look at a team like the New York Giants. I think that's very interesting because I think they're drafting a quarterback very early. I think Cam Ward most likely. But if you don't want to rush Cam Ward into the fold, do they play like a 2004 game there where they drafted Eli Manning, they signed Kurt Warner, rolled with Warner for a little bit before handing the keys over to Eli Manning? Do they try a similar kind of concept there? Kirk Cousins, he's the starter until Cam Ward's ready or until they go tired of Cousins. I think there's a lot of possibilities there, and there's a lot of teams that would be more than willing to give up a third round pick. Now, the big question involving Kirk Cousins, and this is what I'm going to throw over to you, Mize. What team do you think, or teams do you think Kirk Cousins will waive his no trade clause? Because that's so important here. What teams do you think he'd be willing to waive his no trade clause? Do you think he'll do it for anybody, or do you think there's only, hey, I'm only going to go to team A or team B?
Well, it's an interesting question. I think that's something here that Kirk Cousins. I think there's a little ego involved, and I'm not saying that Kirk Cousins has a big ego. He's probably like the most anti-ego guy that you could say. But as far as being that competitive football player type of guy, you want to be a starter. You don't want to be on a team and be a backup. So in that case, I think if it gets down to crunch time, I think there's a lot of teams, maybe not all the teams, but there's a lot of teams that Kirk Cousins would consider going to. But I definitely think when I look at the list, I think Pittsburgh Steelers definitely is a one. There's a story. Yeah, I mean, that's just a great team to play for. Traditionally winning culture, storied franchise, Super Bowl, caliber team in the past. Mike Tomlin's a very good coach. So I think Kirk Cousins, Pittsburgh Steelers, definitely one. The Giants, I think that's an interesting one. I think in the notoriety that you get in New York is, kind of interesting. There's also a very storied career there, or team, or a history there as well. So I think Kirk Cousins maybe waive it to go to the Giants, but the fluctuation in that staff, that's something that I think that maybe it's closer to time when it's down to the brass tacks, and then he needs to figure something out. That could be a team later on that he decides to get that he would allow himself to get traded to. But outside of that, I think any of these other teams around the league that really need a quarterback, I mean, Titans, I don't know if he would let himself go to the Titans. The Titans just seem like a really bad team over the last few years, kind of made some really poor decisions, and they've showed they haven't really been great at evaluating draft talent as well. Whether it's Will Levis they bring in, seem like they're not happy with him. Whether it's Traylon Burks, they just really haven't done a whole lot of great stuff. So I think overall, Kirk Cousins, there's a few options on the table, but I don't think every team is an option for him right now.
I'll give you one dark horse, and that's the San Francisco 49ers playing for Kyle Shanahan. Who's Shanahan? Very familiar with Cousins. There's that Washington connection going back a number of years. If the 49ers have had to let go of a lot of people because they're trying to anticipate paying Brock Purdy a lot of money. There are some rumblings, some rumors, nothing really set in stone that the 49ers, Shanahan isn't in love with Purdy. He likes Purdy but doesn't love him. Is there a chance that Shanahan's able to or wants to bring in Kirk Cousins to compete with Brock Purdy? I think Kirk Cousins would handle going out to the West Coast to Santa Clara. Thinks he has a chance to play in his mind for a good team, good coach, good organization. I think to me, the 49ers are the dark horse team to trade with the Atlanta Falcons for a third round pick to get Kirk Cousins. I think there's a lot of things that could have to work out there. I don't know if the 49ers cap space, Falcons cap space, a lot of deals, a lot of things would have to be adjusted. But I think the big theme here is that we are seeing calls, we're seeing reports about teams willing to trade for Kirk Cousins. Earlier this offseason, to kind of put a bow on this, there were all the reports that the Falcons were trying to ship Kirk Cousins or the Falcons were trying to do something with Kirk Cousins. That died down, and then they said, okay, we're fine with him being our QB2 if no one wants him. The momentum has shifted. It's flipped, right? Now teams are calling the Falcons. Calls are being made, which to me is an indication that a big-time deal is going to happen sooner rather than later.